Good evening. This is the Wednesday, December 4th, 2013 meeting of the Finance Committee. It's just after 7 o'clock. My apologies for the late start. In accordance with open meeting law, this meeting is being recorded. Is anyone else recording in the meeting? There being none, we'll get started here. Our agenda tonight is we're going to have the fiscal 15 budget kickoff with a presentation by our town CFO. We've got just a few transfers, review of minutes, and then we'll adjourn. So this should be a fairly quick meeting. We've got substantially all the department heads here, et cetera. So I appreciate everyone coming tonight. We'll try to keep this moving so you can get on to better places. I'm going to open this up and turn the meeting over to the town CFO, Ed. You want to just get right into the budget?
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I drill down into the details, I just want to remind everyone, thank you for coming tonight, of the budget timeline. After tonight's kickoff, we are expecting budgets to be submitted to the town manager and the accountant by January 13th, 2014. In accordance with the timeline, the Finance Committee will commence their deliberations with each and every department starting on February 19th and running through April 9th. Also, a reminder or a note that the financial policies are incorporated into the budget projections or estimates tonight. These financial policies were adopted roughly 1 year ago by the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen, actually in November of 12. This would be year 2 of implementation of these policies, and we have seen some positive results as a result of these policies being incorporated into the budgetary process. So with that, I can now begin to get into details, but I think the town manager would like to say a few remarks before we get going.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I want to thank all of the department heads and division heads for all the work that they've put into this, along with Ed Kazanovich, the CFO, does a great job. And just, I think it's worth repeating a couple of things that we said at town meeting just to set the stage on FY14, a couple of highlights that I think it's worth letting the public know, again, the situation that we're in through FY14. We did have an increase in our stabilization fund to about $2.28 million. We had increase in our free cash, which is now at $3.991 million. We have added to our OPEB fund through the financial policies over the last 2 years, which is now at $1 million. And I know Ed will be speaking to the OPEB fund and the importance of that during tonight. And we also have an increase in our excess levy capacity. After town meeting, we were at 1.14%. Whereas many communities are at 2.5 and actually going for overrides and above. And one other noteworthy item would be infrastructure investments. We've continued to increase our infrastructure investments. We've gone from 450 to 475 to 500 to 525 over the last 4 fiscal years, in addition to the Chapter 90 funds. So I just thought it was worth bringing that up to show you where we've gone in the last year, and turn it over to Ed for the financial picture for this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill? Technical difficulties.
Mr. Chairman, while he's getting that ready, I would like to add one more thing.
Sure,
As long
absolutely.
as we have 1 minute. I just wanted to also point out that we did show this at town meeting, and a number of people asked me after, and just want to once again explain that we had a significant savings in healthcare this year through a number of healthcare reform initiatives that we took. We had about a total of $946,000 for this year alone. $569,000 are due to changes that, and those $569,000 annually going forward due to changes that the employees agreed to. through a collective bargaining process and through another negotiating process outside of Chapter 30B. So I want to thank the employees as well. They will see a reduction in their premiums, and the town likewise will see a reduction in ours. And that's a $570,000 annual savings. We had some other negotiated changes through our contractual negotiations that brought a lot of the, will eventually bring all of the 90-10 grandfathered employees down to where everyone else is at 76-24. So I wanted to point that out. And one other item that we had received a lot of comments on after the town meeting, which was the legal expenses, that those have gone down significantly. The primary reason for that would be the reduction in the use of labor council during negotiations. The assistant town manager, myself, and each department head for the units that we were negotiating with did all the negotiations ourselves. We have completed negotiations with 9 of the 11 units. The last one we had, excuse me, the 10th one, we did complete, and we are awaiting a ratification vote, which I believe they're bringing it back for a vote in the next couple of days. And that leaves one other union that we hope to be able to wrap it up in the next couple of weeks. But 9 are done, ratified, and in place.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the update on it.
Let's try this again, Mr. Chairman.
Come on, Ed, you've done this before, let's go.
I can see it here, but I can't see it in front of me, so I'm gonna have to rely on the visual here. Okay. This budget is built on the premise of using 1.5% of available 2.5% levy under Prop 2.5. Total appropriations, $54,858,000, and we'll get into some of the details in the following screens. Local receipts is level funded at $7,739,000 and change. Cherry sheet revenue at this point, we're not hearing anything from the Commonwealth of Mass with regards to 2015, although we're not hearing that revenue is falling short of estimates either. So I think it's safe to say that we can estimate at this point in time level funding from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for cherry sheet state aid. Tax levy, once again, uses 1.50 of a possible 2.5%. In addition to that, we are utilizing $400,000 of new growth. Available funds down significantly due to the $1 million Pappas gift. This is the final portion of that amount, which only has a balance of about $31,000. We have been using about $400,000 the last few years. Total revenue source is at $55,026,000 and change, and we're estimating at this point a excess unobligated balance of about $167,000. If we break down the components of revenue, as you can see, local receipts is level funded. Once again, cherry sheet is level funded. The blended tax levy using 1.5% and $400,000 of new growth would give us an increase of about 2.83%. Debt exclusion for the high school, a little under 1% increase raised outside of Prop 2.5. Available funds down $658,000 or 31.34%. That's the big area of revenue loss estimated for FY15. Total revenue up about $300,000 or a little over 0.5%, 0.55. Total appropriations up $132,000 or 0.24%. Now you got to realize a lot of FY14 appropriations were one-time appropriations that now become available for the operational side of the budget. So the 1/4% on the operational side is much higher because those dollars are being used as an infusion into the departmental budgets. Now to break down the revenue on the tax levy, it commits 1.25% of a potential 2.5% of $454,000 for operational side of the budget. It commits, in accordance with the financial policies, year 2, 1/10 of 2.5%. That value is $90,848 and change. Once again, we're utilizing $400,000 of new growth. That's a conservative number based upon our 5-year average, and I have a chart following this one here on that. It increases our levy limit because we're only taxing at 1.5%, increases it by 1%. That would go up $363,000 and change, giving our excess levy estimated at this point in time at $3.3 million, which makes up about 8.82 of our potential levy that we're allowed to tax. So we'd be taxing at 91.18% of the levy. And it raises $1.458 million outside of the levy for the continued debt and interest payment on the Auburn High School. Here's our 5-year average on new growth. It actually went down from the last year. We were averaging 629,000. We dropped 2009 and added 14. 5-year average is now at 559, 110,000. I mean, $559,110. So if we're using 400 and we continue this trend, it's fair to say we have about $150,000 once again to use to offset the tax rate or to mitigate the compression if the Board of Selectmen choose to continue that trend. Here's a breakdown of the tax levy. There's our beginning base, $36,339,000. We would be allowed to tax an additional 908, the 2.5%. Once again, we're only taxing at 1.50. Is our added new growth of 400. So our levy to be raised and taxed for the FY15 budget would be $34,328,000. That's 91.18% of the maximum that we're allowed at $37,647,000. Cherry Sheet State Aid, we are funding at FY14 level, $10,056,421. We are somewhat concerned about the Commonwealth's position on the technology tax that was rescinded by the legislature. That created a $120 million hole. The legislature is trying to figure out ways to come up with that additional amount of money. So there may be an offset to the Cherry Sheet State Aid if, in fact, revenues come in as estimated, and they may fall short by that $120 million. On the available fund side, we are earmarking $1.4 million. The two first bullets are in accordance with the financial policy. The FY14 budget appropriated $130,000 of free cash and overlay surplus. We wanted to eliminate those as a funding source over a 3-year period. This is year 2. It cuts that $130,000 by 50%. So the earmark in the FY15 budget for both overlay and free cash would be $65,000. It utilizes $125,000 of SOAR retained earnings to meet 100% of the capital needs as identified in the capital plan for the SOAR department. The budget adjusts the ambulance revenue to reflect current collection rate. Right now, that reduction for FY15 is $25,000 less than FY14. Our receivable is growing. The federal government there is a delay in receiving Medicare and Medicaid receipts. And actually, there's been a 7% reduction in the amount that we get reimbursed for those individuals that qualify under those Medicare items. It uses the final $31,000 of the $1 million that was committed for the Pappas Recreation Complex. I think when town meeting voted this authorization, we indicated that for the first 4 years, this would be tax levy neutral because the $1 million would cover the debt and interest obligation for the project. This is the final payment from that $1 million. and it level funds most other available fund sources. Here are those available fund sources. As you can see, the first two are under the policy. As you can see, further down, the Pappas gift in FY14 provided a $437,000 contribution to the debt. This year, it's only 31. So we took a $400,000 reduction that we now have to assume through general fund revenues to meet that obligation for the debt and interest payments. Once again, 1.4 million, down from 2,102,000 in present fiscal year. On the local receipt side, right now, we're estimated level funding, consistent with FY14 DOR certified values. We are watchful on the economy-driven receipts, primarily motor vehicle excise, hotel motel tax, meals tax, license and permits, and investment income. So as time goes on, we do quarterly budget to actual on these, so we may be amending these as the budget rolls out in the coming months. This is one area that we would be able to fine-tune as information comes in. Right now, total projected revenue at $55,026,282.03. That's up roughly over 0.5%, or up $299,793.74. On the expense side, we indexed all wages by $658,000, roughly 2%. A little over 2% of total FY14 salary and wages across the board. That value is indexed by contractual obligations. The budget also meets solid waste contractual increase for collection. We believe on the disposal side, we have been able to contain that cost through recycling and through some other creative measures. This budget also reduces group healthcare costs by another $284,000. As you recall, for FY14, at the fall town meeting, there was an amendment to Article 2 that reduced it by $284,000 as well. The $284,000 for FY14 represented 6-month savings. The total estimated savings over an annual basis was $569,000. So what we did is we reduced present value by another $284 and then indexed it by 6%. The 6% is an estimate that we've been given by our advisors, our healthcare advisors, as an industry estimate standard, an expectation where they believe the rates are going. Hopefully, we may be lucky enough that we'll be flatlining it. We don't know. We won't know until March or April when those renewals come in. The budget on the operational side increases tax levy once again by that 0.125%. So we're building in roughly another $91,000 into the budget through tax levy to fund some of our capital needs. It maintains our OPEB funding level at $500,000 as identified in our financial policies. I can tell you that we're well short, and we had a chart on the town meeting floor. We're only funding about 18% of what we should be funding. I don't know if you recently watched the news about the city of Detroit. They just filed bankruptcy. A judge it indicated through a ruling that the city of Detroit does not have to honor their pension liability. They can reduce the benefits that they're giving their employees. All the more reason that this should be at least maintained at a level of 500, if not more, because this protects our employees in the long run. Not only our pension costs, but our health care costs as well. So I think because of the Detroit model, I think there's going to be a push nationwide for a potential mandate on OPEB in future years. So this could be significantly higher if in fact that mandate should be implemented. So I can't stress the importance enough of maintaining at least that level of funding. We'd like to earmark more if we can, so this is probably a priority that we would be putting forth as part of the budgetary process. This budget meets all of our debt and interest obligations. There is no current earmark for the middle school in here because that is unknown. Although that's neutral because that amount can be raised outside the levy limit by a vote of, by passage of the debt exclusion vote.
Ed, you're talking the existing middle school or the new middle school?
No, this would be the new middle school.
Okay.
This budget maintains our current level of funding for roadway reconstruction. As you know, town meeting voted an amended Article 2 by $25,000 to give us a present value of $525,000. It level funds snow and ice, which was recently amended by $50,000. And it level funds the school department Medicaid receipts, which was amended by an additional 12 at $124,000 and change. Continuing with expense, it level funds Commonwealth of Mass cherry sheet offsets and assessments at FY14 value. Once again, the budget incorporates the adopted financial policies. This would be year 2. This budget does not have an earmark for stabilization at this point. As you know, we always make a consideration for stabilization once the final numbers from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are received. And that's always well after the annual town meeting, so it allows us to go back and revisit the budgets and as well as make a consideration for stabilization. It estimates an appropriation for debt and interest on a band that we currently have for our FY14 capital, and it folds in our FY15 capital, which we are currently discussing with departments because certain things can be amended. We provided a value of roughly, I think, $310,000 for debt and interest payment in year 1 for that amount of money that we would have to borrow. Here are the budgets by department. Let me just note some of the changes that have been made. All the departments have been level funded with the exception of this is all level funded. Solid waste, as you can see, $13,000 increase because of the commitment, contractual commitment we have with Allied. We have an increase in our debt, actually a reduction in our debt, an increase in the high school debt. There's that new debt for FY14 and 15, about 6 lines down, $310,000. In our interest obligation. These are all knowns except for the FY14 and 15 debt. It increases our CIP capital by that $90-some-odd thousand. It also increases SOAR retained earnings by 5, and that's covered 100% through SOAR Enterprise Fund. Here's our wage index, about 5-6 lines from the bottom. As you can see, there's a $658,000. That's the 2%. Across the board, all wages, town and school. Total appropriations, $54,858,593.96. On the expense side, that's up roughly 1/4 of 1%, 0.24 over current value. Once again, that would leave an unobligated balance after all commitments have been made of $167,688.07. Certainly, we know these numbers are going to change, but this is the best information we have at this point in time. A few recommendations relative to the preparation of the budget. Certainly, we are underscoring the importance of meeting the timeline. I think the departments have heard the message from the Finance Committee in prior years loud and clear. that they would like to see a departmental needs budget. Certainly, we know we're not going to be able to meet all those needs, but those needs that are not met, we can then begin to prioritize. And once dollars do become available, we can make a recommendation on how to meet those needs that were not originally met. To all departments, the wages need to be computed on a 52.2-week schedule. And the employee wage schedules need to reflect all current contractual obligations. Right now, we have 2 bargaining groups that have not ratified or executed the contract. Those wage schedules should reflect current financial obligations. Certainly, we'd have to make some changes once those contracts are ratified. We'd have to amend those employee rosters. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions now, if you so choose.
Excellent, Ed. Thank you very much. And I don't know if we have any questions at this moment or comments. I'll remind everyone we're on TV, though, so. In fact, even from the department heads, if there's any comments out there, I know your bosses are up here, but once again, we're on TV, so we'll just leave that alone. All right. You know, this is third or fourth year I've been doing this, and every year I'm going to say, well, I'll come up with some sort of, grandiose speech and say, number one, thank you, and number two, I know the budgets are tight from the start, and let's just move forward with these. It's not worthy of a speech. You guys work hard. We appreciate that. Our door, in terms of coming up any Wednesday that we have a meeting, is open for you department heads to come up. Try to get on the agenda. Certainly during your budget, we would love to see you. If you don't think it's necessary, if you're having a quiet year in terms of budgeting needs, then you don't need to come on up here. And if we have a need to reopen any budget, we will make sure you department heads know about it. Hopefully it's good news for your budget when we do that. But we work actively with town administration and Sharon to make sure you're given every notice. I know we start at 7 o'clock. It's a lousy way to end the day. It's kind of just a start for us in terms of this. But we do appreciate your flexibility, and we do want to hear from you. I know we keep asking, and I know there's occasionally a department request that makes it to us that's a little bit different than the town manager recommendation. We like to hear why and a couple of those things. We know most of you are trying to be good team players in terms of doing what's best for the town. We're all taxpayers here. So I guess thank you. Great to see you all. I hope everyone's in good health and have a good holiday. And once again, our door in terms of our Wednesday meetings are always open. So thanks for your time. I know we have a couple of transfers here for those that are interested and have transfers in front of us. Thank you. Okay, good. I think that's fair enough. And what you would not be putting your... That's great.
He sent it electronically. Thank you very much.
Someone had that, that's great.
I must have a half a dozen.
That's good.
Every time I
Wait
send
till all your friends come.
I'm supposed to do that today.
We're going to hold off just for a second and let the noise in the hall clear out. Ed, thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to move on with the transfers. Adam's here. Adam, you've got a transfer that had us all scratching our heads. It wasn't big dollars, but once we get some information on this. So let me read it first, and then we'll talk about it, Adam, okay? This is a reserve transfer, planning miscellaneous supplies within the Division of Inspectional Services, correct? Amount requested $1,105 to purchase necessary departmental equipment. My first question before I even have my budget book is, we don't have a budget for this? What's going on here? And I guess we don't.
We don't, and what this is we're purchasing a computer, monitor, and software packages for the assistant town planner, who will begin work after the first of the year. So, knowing that this is a new position, and it was money that was added into my budget, I looked at what I had in my budget and made some apparently lacking assumptions in cost of machine, and I didn't want to assume the position would make it. I knew that I could buy a standard machine. The gentleman that we're hiring has a set of skills in GIS and other graphics programs that I wasn't necessarily anticipating finding somebody. So he offers us a set of skills that will allow us to do additional work with a software package. Now, the two intra-departmental transfers are sort of the money that I had assumed I would have to work on a machine, and that would cover the cost of the machine and the office package. The reserve fund transfer is for the Adobe Suite, which is a creative suite program. It's Photoshop, Illustrator, all of those things. And what this will allow us to do is sort of beef up our reports with graphics, sort of work on some of the economic development stuff we're looking to do, create brochures, graphics for the website, that kind of stuff. That software package is $1,300. So that's where that sort of over-the-top reserve fund transfer came from.
No, and that's fine. You could only anticipate so much given the skill set that you're going to bring in here at the time of the budget. So just to kind of summarize this a little bit further, we're going to have two additional transfers, all relating to the same explanation that Adam's given us. So it'll give us an opportunity to say, Adam, you've said enough, I think, and maybe we can get all three done. Any questions from the board on this, Jim?
I had a question on the transfer from conferences and meetings. You're clearing out that entire budget.
That I am. That is, it's called conferences and meetings. It's my education account. I have in the past used it to purchase materials such as books to attend classes. There are a number of free classes that I can attend. I don't have a certification that requires me to keep up CEUs at this time, so it's not imperative that I have those funds. While I agree that's not something I necessarily want to clear out, I think that in this instance it's something that is valuable and necessary.
My biggest concern was I'm just looking at what was spent last year on that same department, conferences and meetings, and, you know, it was a couple $1,000s. I just want to make sure we're taking money out now and then putting it back in.
No, the account we're emptying is for the planning department,
Yep.
which would be me specifically. The Board of Health and the building department or building division, both which fall under, they have separate line items for their conferences and meetings, their education. Those are funded and those are being used for their education materials and their classes. So I've looked at that up and down, and if there were a way I could keep some money in there, I would have, but I think that 6-month period, it's not going to destroy my credibility.
Okay, thanks.
We'll see about that.
Well, this specifically won't.
Yeah, there we go. Any other questions? All right, right now, we're just going to vote on the reserve account transfer, and that was for $1,105. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? So voted. Thank you. Okay. So we'll move right into the two additional transfers. They're both going to the same account, so I'll accept a motion to take these two as one motion.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. The first is from conferences, meetings. We're clearing out, as Jim had mentioned, the $850 budget that was there. All of that going to purchase necessary departmental supplies, as Adam had illustrated to us. The second is from the salary assistant account, present balance of $12,604. Amount requested is $1,500 for the same, going to planning miscellaneous supplies. Any further questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
Motion to recommend?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, so voted. Adam, thank you.
Thank you all. Have a very nice holiday
Have a
season.
good holiday. Excellent. So we've got a new person starting first of the year,
We do, part-time, under 19 hours a week.
but sounds like he's got some pretty good skills coming in, so.
Some excellent skills coming in,
So-
allowing us to do some things we were over and above what we were expecting to be able to do.
I did find that interesting. He did say the first of the year, I'm like, geez, that's in 4 weeks, like, oh, wow.
We budgeted it to start there, so we
Yeah.
made sure we worked with somebody who realized that it wasn't going to be till January.
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay, the one other transfer, this is under Human Resources, from the reserve fund, present balance, well, is that 148? Did we transfer from that already? Amount requested, $4,000. This is for medical exams, to pay for medical exams. I guess that'd be Department of Transportation exams, drug testing, et cetera. Now, do we have some budgets already within budgeted dollars for these kind of tests already?
Yes.
Is
There is
this,
a medical exam line item under HR.
yeah,
Original appropriation, $3,000, and we've exceeded that by $676.
already?
Now, we've had some turnover, some new employees, so every time an employee comes on board, they're required to have a medical exam, whether it be public safety, whether it be highway. So, some turnover, and if you look at the 5-year average, certainly it fluctuates, all depending on,
Circumstance and, okay. Is this bringing all of those expenses into one account now?
Yes.
All right, so they were spread out before, and now they're all within this one bucket here now. Okay. That's why
I
I
think
just the number,
originally they were
like,
under,
wow.
was it personnel?
It was under Personnel Board
Yeah.
originally, and then
Yeah.
Town Manager, and now HR.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions on this?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So voted. Thank you. Okay. So that takes care of our transfers. We have two sets of minutes from 11/14/12 and 11/28/12. Any questions, corrections, comments on those? Excellent. That actually concludes our agenda. I know that within the budget discussion, we had a couple of concerns. I'll actually open that up, some open items we thought we had. Anyone have anything? I know, Jim?
Well, I had a brief thought about CIP with the new middle school coming. Maybe not for this fiscal year, but extending it out, depending on what's gonna happen with the old middle school and the closing of, the other two schools, possibly two schools moving into the old middle school. Is there gonna be talk about moving some of the CIP items around? And I guess a follow-up to that, is there gonna be some sort of a joint meeting between the school and finance and administration, selectmen, to talk about those?
Great questions. We're concerned about that as well. Actually, we haven't met with schools yet because we were told that they wanted to revisit their CIP and an amendment would be coming to us. They did meet the filing deadline for capital, but I was under the impression that it was gonna be amended to reflect maybe some of those considerations. Recently found out, we followed up with a call, recently found out there will be no amendment. So we are about to schedule a meeting with school to have a discussion regarding capital. I'm all, you know, I heard some things, I don't know, I recently heard that once the middle school opens, in September 15, the students from Mary D. and JB will be occupying the existing middle school. And we know that has to come with some type of rehab or some type of modifications. What that value is, we don't know.
Yeah.
How that's gonna be met, we don't know. So I think those discussions do need to take place, the sooner the better. Because if, in fact, that is the plan, that's only a year and a half away.
Yeah.
So it may require something substantially more than what's in the capital. We just don't know.
Okay. I'm just hoping at some point that, like I said, like a joint meeting to discuss, and I know it's early in the process, but, the sooner the better, as you said. Year and a half seems like a long time, but when you're talking about a major change with, moving into one new school and two others possibly moving into the older school, that's a lot of moving around.
Well, not only that, but you gotta remember, these funds were committed for a purpose that was voted on by town meeting, and that money's already been borrowed in some cases.
Yep.
So these are gonna require amendments, so it's gonna require a vote of town meeting, so that, you gotta factor that into the timeline, because that's gonna delay things even further.
What would we have, 3 town meetings before that would actually occur? The 2 next year?
Whatever upgrades, enhancements,
Yeah.
modifications need to be made to the middle school, I don't know how quickly
I
that.
hate to have a special town meeting to go over things like that,
Right.
to try and work it into the regular schedule for the May and the fall one.
Through the chair, we can work with the school department and the Board of Selectmen to set up another joint meeting. I know this committee, as well as the Board of Selectmen and school committee, at the last joint meeting, probably about a year ago, said that they wanted to do this on a fairly regular basis annually,
Yeah.
even if there wasn't any specific issue at that time. I believe you, Mr. Chairman, had suggested we do this just to make sure that we're all on the same page with
Yeah,
various
and this is a
things.
perfect
So
example
it's
of
probably a
that.
good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the sooner the better on that. Actually, we won't get busy, this committee, until, what, mid-late February? Just based on how things seem to roll. These changes in the CIP are actually part of this budget process anyway, so they really do need to be addressed, even if their financial impact may not affect the 15 budget. Actually, I think it will. My concern and thought on this is, since I've been in town, there have been 3 schools that have been taken offline. And is there some organizational plan on how to do that in general? Do we need approvals from this, that, or the other? How actually were those things done? Do we have some expertise to call on? This would be going back to the old Boy Street School, Stoneville School, and obviously Randall, at least in, that I can remember, that have been taken offline. To the town manager, Julie, when you were with the city of Worcester, I'm not sure how the configuration went there. Was there some experience, and I mean that both in a good, bad sort of way, and, is there some expertise that you can bring from that,
I worked on actually 4 school dispositions just in the last 2 years before I left: Lee Street, Dartmouth Street, Adams Street, and the school building at Lincoln Square, which had been part of the school. And, we've got some thoughts on how to do that. There was a process that had to be followed. There are MOAs that you have to look at for maintenance of the properties once they're vacated. We have to make sure that you're allocating enough funds to make sure that those properties are being maintained until you finally dispose of them. And then there has to be a process for disposal that has to be agreed upon, and then the decision has to be made on where the funds go when they come back in. And reimbursing certain accounts that are probably utilize in advance for some of those maintenance events.
Turn them into condos.
Well, and as a matter of fact, in two of those schools, they were purchased for condominiums. One was purchased, actually, all three at some point ended up purchased.
Every
for
school that I went to in Worcester was
But
turned
it's a
into
long
condo.
process, you know, to your point.
Long
It is a long
process.
process, even though everyone may be on the same page with the schools that need to be taken offline, there's a process that has to be followed to actually get them offline, and that can take time.
Okay, then if I could suggest the next step, I know that, I think initially it was the school department, it might have been Dr. Brunel that originally had suggested a joint meeting, so I'll call it a couple of years ago now. But there seemed to be some confusion as to where the impetus would start on the next meeting, who would basically be taking the ball and running with it. If I could suggest some way between you and Dr. Brunel, because she may have some experience also with taking a school offline and that kind of thing, emerging schools, or any expertise we have on that side. Just to set up the agenda for the meeting, as you know, I'm a stickler for, let's have a reason why we're going to meet. I know we have a reason, but at least if we have an agenda and we can start talking about, all of the items that need to be addressed, and if we need to bring in other experts, let's face it, for instance, these schools, at least one of them may be a good candidate for commercial sale, possibly. We would need to bring in an expert on that, and what's the best way to process that, or what options that we have. And that's just a for example. But I think the sooner we get on that, what I really want to avoid is us becoming a big town and not communicating. We are a small town, and we should be communicating on this. And if it becomes an issue of, hey, look, the school department thought they had some committed funds within the CIP, they want to keep those, I want to understand the reason why they think they should have certain funds that have been promised to their budget, even though those schools may be going offline, and let's have some clear communication on that. Just a strong suggestion on that, so the Finance Committee doesn't get stuck in the middle. Jim?
Just to follow up, the school department had a committee looking at the whole proposition of combining or taking a couple schools offline, and they made a recommendation. Are they still working together, or?
I want to say that recommendation went to the school committee, and the school committee
Yes.
supported, they voted that.
But I don't know if that committee was dissolved after that, or if they're still working on that. I'm really not sure. I'm not really.
We can find out for you.
Yeah,
I'm not
just
sure
to
if
see,
it's still an
because-
active committee.
I know that they've looked at that specific move.
Or was it a working group, which automatically disbands once the recommendation?
Yeah, that's what I'm not
Right.
sure.
I don't know what
Right.
the structure was.
And if that's the case, there obviously was some pretty good expertise
Yeah.
within that particular committee. I would love to tap any resource we can, just to do the smartest thing for the town, financially feasible to do that, without actually blowing money, which, we're talking some multi-million-dollar pieces of real estate and buildings, even if some think they're just a pile of bricks. Even if, my biggest concern is if any of these buildings are left vacant for a period of time because we couldn't coordinate. I mean, that's probably going to happen anyways, but if we could minimize that, I would hate if Mary D. was one of the buildings coming offline for that to be sitting there for a period of time, just for a vandal target. There's a lot of windows there. And right next to Town Hall, that's just not a good thing. It puts an added piece of stress on both our police and fire department for public safety purposes. There's no reason that should happen as best as we can avoid it. If I could suggest, maybe by the end of January, if you could come back, if not sooner, to, let's start setting up
Do
some
that.
meetings
We-
on that.
Well, we can work with the superintendent. I believe we're meeting next week with the superintendent anyway, so we'll put this on the agenda.
Okay.
And then we'll work to see if we can get something set up. My recommendation would be probably more in early January, to at least try to get a
That's,
date for all three committees.
that's
Rather than
fine.
waiting, because if we're going to be going into the CIP process as well, I think these are questions you want
Yeah.
answered now.
Yeah.
Yep, or at least feasible, and I know we'd all be interested in that process and being part of it.
Yeah, we will do that.
And as just a quick follow-up to that, I don't think we need to stay more than a minute or two, is we'll be looking for some of your thoughts on what we're doing about replacing or taking care of our tower truck issue for the fire department. I know that's been brought up. We've all been trying to keep that on the front burner. But to me, that's something that will likely need to be addressed as part of the next 5-year CIP, if not through other means also. And I think that should be discussed as open, as quickly as possible, especially if that becomes an outside article of some kind. What's the best way to do that? So if we can keep that within the CIP discussion too. I don't know if there's any other big CIP items, hopefully not, that we need to address there. Okay, that's fine. Anything else? All right, that's great. Julie, thanks for joining us. I know you're a cameo appearance twice a year or so, but that's fine, you know.
I'll come more often.
Yeah, no, you know, that's.
Don't want to overstay my welcome.
It's a good point, too. That's a good point. Nothing else? I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So voted. Thank you. Good night.